now.
So the first step is to remove the cables out of the way to the side, and then open the sterile pouch. So this pouch is not sterile here, but your flow path will be in a sterile pouch which you cut open, and take the entire flow path, which is actually pre-assembled, out and lay it down in the center of the machine like this. So it's one giant contiguous flow path, completely pre-assembled, and all you have to do is lay this flow path out, on the valve manifold, which are the pinch valves, and the flow, and thread the tubing through the pumps and the flow cell and the various detectors. So that's what he's doing right now. He's got the 4 inlets for pump A that he's setting through, each of the channels on the pump A manifold. Okay, so the solenoids are at the bottom, and they have a pinch clamp that moves up, the plunger moves up, and it will pinch the tubing. Alright, so he set that, and now he's taking the pump tubing through the peristaltic pump, threading it through the peristaltic pump, and there the pump tubing is installed. And he's going to do exactly the same thing with the B pump and the B valves. Okay, so there he goes. Now each of those tubes is labeled. Each of those tubes is labeled so that you put it in the right channel, and the corresponding valve is also labeled, so you can't go wrong. And here he is threading the tubing through the pump. Okay, so the tubing is now installed through the pumps, and the next step is for him to take the tubing through the 2 flow meters that are in line. And so there's a flow meter tube that sits across from the mini ultrasonic flow sensor, and so he just put those tubes in the ultrasonic flow sensor, as you can see. And the next step is to install the pH sensor and the conductivity and the air sensor. So he's threading the tube. He just push the tube into the air sensor and is doing the installation for the, Danny, is that the pH or the conductivity sensor?
pH1.
That's the pH1, that's the pre-column pH sensor. So he just put that in the slot. Yeah, and the next one is the conductivity sensor that he attaches a bracket to. And then he's sliding it into its slot, which is pre-labeled. There. So the pre-column conductivity sensor is installed. So we now have the tubing being installed for that goes to the column, that goes to the air eject valve, and that goes for the pre-column device, which might be a filter or a bubble trap or anything like that. And so the valves in the front that you see he's installing the tubing go to each of those ports. So again, these are pre-assembled, pre-labeled. So essentially lay them down on the individual channels that you have right in front of you. Okay? and the ones on the right are the ones going to the column, and the ones on the left are the ones going to the filter. Okay, and this one is the air eject tubing. So now what's left is post column. We are going to install the UV flow cell and the pH flow cell. So the UV flow cell just slides into the slot in the UV detector, and the pH flow cell is right below that. And the tubing, and so the flow goes down from the pH flows into the pH flow cell, comes up through the UV sensor and into the conductivity sensor, which he's putting a clip on now. So there he installs the clip.
Oh.
There the clip is installed, and then he just sets it down on the bracket, which is below, so it snaps in there. And then these are the fraction, this is the fraction valve. So in this machine there are 4 fraction valves, and so he lays the tubing down over the fraction valves, right? So the entire flow path is now installed, and so he's going to make the electrical connections next. The electrical connections for the pressure sensor, for the temperature sensor, and so forth. So that's the next step. Go ahead. That's the pressure one. So there's the pressure sensor and the flow path, and he just made the connection of the cable to the pressure sensor. And that is the conductivity detector. So he's making the connection to the cable that goes into the instrument. And here is another conductivity detector, and he's doing the same thing. So there's a cable that goes into the machine, and he just connected the conductivity detector to that.
Pressure tube.
And that is the pressure tube. And so he is connecting, again, snapping in the pressure cable. And that is a temperature sensor, which is there in the flow cell, in the flow path. So he just connected that. He's next going to install the pH probes in the pH flow cell. So the pH probes are shipped separately because they have to stay wet. And so there he's screwing in the pH reference and sample probes, and then their connector is in turn connected to the cable that goes into the machine. And then he's doing the same thing with the pH sensor, which is post column. So the first one was pre column, and this one, these are the pH sensors that are post column. So you simply screw in the sample and the 2 probes, and there now he's putting in the cable that actually goes into the machine. Right? And closes the cover. And installs the lid on the flow cell. And the last step is to install the plates, the backing plates for all the pinch valves. So these are just bars with pinch. It's a pinch bar that goes over each of the tubing manifolds, and so he's now doing the installation for the pinch bar for pump manifold B. You simply install the bar and hand tighten the screws, and then similarly go ahead and install the pinch bars for each of the column manifolds. There's a column, which means to the column, from the column, to the filter, from the filter, the air eject, and so there are two sets of pinch bars that you install, which is what he's doing. Again, you hand tighten them, and then you install the pinch bar for the fraction valves. Again, very simple procedure. Doesn't require the use of tools or anything like that. An ordinary lab scientist should be able to do the installation. And then the next step is to put the plates on top of the flow sensors. So remember, we had put the flow sensor tubes, we had snapped those in, and so now on the ultrasonic flow sensor we are putting the plates that go on top. So that's flow sensor for one pump, and this is the flow sensor plate for the second flow meter. And you can lightly tighten those with a screwdriver, which is what he's doing right now, so that they remain in position and don't move out, because you want the flow accuracy on these flow meters is astounding. It's about 0.1%. So, and can go down to very low levels in terms of flow rate, so the flow range is excellent. So there he now screws in the last couple of screws on the flow meter plate. That's it. The flow meter, the whole flow path the installation is now complete, and for running it you can simply lower the top hood and slide in the sliding panels that are on each of the three sides. So you can see it's very simple to install, and the disassembly the disassembly or uninstallation is just the opposite of what we just did.